What's going on, everybody? How's it hanging? How's it happening? You guys know what it is. This is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast, brought to you by OTD Rocks, where rock and metal thrive. Happy last podcast of 2020, everybody. Yes, we're finally at the end of 2020, and this is the perfect episode to take you into 2021. We normally interview all the emerging rock and metal bands in the scene today, but we got an opportunity to interview a very prominent musician over the past 55 years in rock music, a former member of the band Chicago. I could not say no to it, and I am so glad I did this because this conversation was absolutely incredible. I got to talk to Bill Champlin, former member of Chicago, on his solo project, talk to him about his new album called Livin' for Love coming out in 2021, and his brand new single called Reason to Believe coming out on New Year's Day 2021. It has all the makings of a very classic Bill Champlin style album that you could imagine. And I can't believe this, but you guys get to listen to this whole entire thing. There are so many stories, so many different nuances about creating the art that is music that is in this podcast that is talked about. It is for everybody. Also, Dad, please enjoy this one. So are you guys ready? Because I sure as hell am. So let's go. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast, you know usually I'm always talking to the emerging acts in hard rock, metal, heavy metal today, but I got an opportunity to do this one, and it was one that I could absolutely not pass up. And I spoke about this with this man earlier, where when I tell my dad that I got to interview him, my dad is literally going to freak out and really start taking interest in all this stuff. So a longtime member of the band Chicago, coming out with his solo album early in 2021, singer, songwriter, guitarist, keyboardist, and all-around good guy, Bill Champlin. So, Bill, welcome to the Chord Progression Podcast.
Hey, man, when I heard it was chord progression, I went, wow, am I learning something new? I'm sick of the progressions I'm using. So, is this where I go to find a new chord progression? It's great to see you, Kevin. It's cool.
It's great to see you. It's great to see you as well, Bill. I'm glad that you're here as well. I'm glad to get talked to.
By the way, you mentioned that it was with Chicago. I was out of that band in 2009, so it's been a good little while.
It's been a good little while, but from what I know is you were in there from the early 80s to the end of the 2000s. So, again, that's almost a 30-year career right there. And
28 years.
And I feel like
81, I think it was August of 81. Through around August of 2009.
The reason I brought up is because I feel like most people are going to, when I say that, they're going to associate that with you right away. So there's going to be a connection made right there, especially in the minds of fans. So I wanted to bring that up right away. However, the key of the interview today is the fact that you being on the podcast is that you have a new solo record coming out in 2021 with the first single coming out on New Year's Day. So, I mean, you're pretty much starting out the new year strong at this point, coming out with a new single.
Yeah, it's the opening song of the album, which I love it just because it starts off. It's kind of like Bambi meets Godzilla. It starts off da 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 da, and then along comes some. It starts hitting really right off the bat. I wrote the song with my wife Tamara, and I wrote the lyrics and melodies. And Bruce Geitch, who's a guitarist, he worked with Richard Marx an awful lot. Has done a lot of songwriting over the years, and he's been a really good friend of ours for a long time. He found the track and he was just looking through his Pro Tools files, and he found the track, and it sounds like a Bill and Tamara thing. I'm gonna send it to him. Just send us an MP3. We were recording it within a day.
Really,
dude? We got it written. All you got to do is send us the files. I'll import them into a Pro Tools file and go to work. And that thing was, with the exception of the Hammond B3 on there, which I played later on. That thing was recorded. All the vocals were done. The lyrics were written and the vocals were done within like 3 days. That track is just on fire. Vinnie Colaiuta is playing drums on it. One of my favorite bass players in the world, George Hawkins, was playing bass. George passed away a couple of years ago, so it was great to get a George track on the album because he's one of my all-time favorite players and singers too.
It is good to get him on the track because then you're bringing more of that past from what you've done and people you've worked with into the solo record as well, even if they haven't been around for a while. But the fact of the matter is that one of your friends sent you an old Pro Tools track that he'd been working on, and it just fit perfectly. And all of a sudden, 3 days later, you pretty much had this whole entire thing set, ready to go and done. It just speaks to the fact that when inspiration strikes, you just got to hit it while it's hot. And it seems like we talked about earlier, right before we started recording, that's exactly what you did with a lot of these songs.
Yeah. Well, I've just always said that you sometimes your progression or your chord thing or your groove lick, it's better just stumbling into it. That's why I play free a lot. I go to the piano and just and I just go ahead and play free. Smoke a joint and go for it. And that's been going on since the early. I played in a band in San Francisco Bay Area in the mid '60s. So what we were doing then, and believe me, it's still going on. We're still having fun. This album is coming from a really, really cool place, and all these. I think that 2021 there's going to be as many albums coming out as there were babies born 9 months after the New York blackout. Because everybody I know is, well, I can't go out and play live. I can't do anything else. I got to be musical. Hell, I'm going to the workstation and work some stuff up. And, people have their Logic. Even GarageBand. People are making records because they got nothing else to do. So, and that's kind of cool in a way.
I know so many bands.
Everything on the recording side more than the live thing,
Oh yeah, I know so many bands that have really taken that to effect where, okay, COVID-19 hits. What are we supposed to do when we can't tour, we can't go out on the road, and we're kind of all stuck in our houses at this point, and we can't go out and do all these things we used to do. So they focus on either trying to build their band and build their brand online, really focus on social media, focus on streaming, all that kind of stuff. But so many bands, it's just, they'd have that raw tenacity and that raw will to be creative. So especially when there's a lot of emotion, a lot of things going on in 2020, not only with the pandemic, also with the Black Lives Matter protests and with the presidential election, there's so many emotions that are happening where writing music is a great way to express what was going on and express those emotions that were happening. So especially in 2021, I feel like especially, come like between April and October, it's like every single week is going to be a massive amount of releases that are happening from not only rock and metal, but all across the board as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's great. At some level, what a better time. You can't find a better time to write songs than, it used to be, let's get in and write the song. We'll finish it tomorrow because I got to go over here and do this. Or I got to go sing backgrounds on somebody's album. Or I got to go to the store or something equally, got to go take out the trash. Hey, rock star, take out the trash. Okay, I got you. Dishes. I got to do the dishes before I write the song. Any of that kind of stuff. In this kind of situation, you're sitting there writing and you're going, well, I got no place to go. So I'm going to just stick with this thing until it's just perfect, until it's just there. Right.
Yeah. You have
the same thing with performing and, recording it. I'm kind of known at least around LA and a lot of the different people here. I've been a background vocal arranger for many records, a whole lot of records, and I'm real kind of good at it. I'm good at stacking, putting my own group together with, just putting track upon track upon track. But I do that really kind of well, and it's all happening. But on this album, I don't want to sing lead the same day I sing backgrounds, so I can walk into the studio with a different hat on. Because the lead really has to touch people, I think. And a lot of times over the years Tamer's kind of noticed it a couple of times. You're singing great, but you still sound like you're doing just a background track. Put some heart in it. Not that it doesn't have heart, but put some just teeth gnashing power into the things. And I kind of, this time around, I went for that. And I think I got a better lead vocal thing going on this record than I have on a lot of things,
I think that's a great approach to go along with it as well, because along not only with yourself, but many other bands and musicians that are making music at this time, because again, you're able to go in and you're able to focus on just one thing that day if you really want to. So if you're focusing on just recording your lead vocals, then you're all into that mindset. You're locked in to the point where you're not worried about what's coming next. You're not worried about, okay, I can only do this for this certain amount of time, then I got to record backing vocals on this other track or maybe with this other band as well. And your mind's kind of in two places at once. At this point, you're able to really focus in deep on what you're working on so that the best comes out of it. And yeah, it is different when you're recording lead vocals and backing vocals, because those lead vocals, that's going to be the main draw for a lot of people as well, because that's one of the biggest things that happens in rock and metal. And anywhere all across the board.
Believe me, that's always, no matter how the tracks are, whether it's reggae, whether it's real hard metal, whether it's anything, what you're selling is the song and the singer. That's what you're really presenting. You're just presenting it with different beds, as it were, And that's what's kind of cool about what this one's doing is it's just, and I got real good friends to come help me with it, so that it's not just all me. Yes, I could do it all myself. I don't want to, I got really good drummers on this record. Vinny Colaiuta played. He didn't even know he was going on my album. I don't know if he still does, for that matter. I mean, Vinny played with Jeff Beck and Sting, and he's an amazing drummer. Joni Mitchell. I mean, this he's been in the ball game, and he just plays as good as anybody on the earth. And when I got this track from Bruce, "A Reason to Believe," I just went, "Oh my goodness me!" And the lyrics on "Reason to Believe" are kind of about gratitude. I'd gone through some cancer moments, and Tamara really helped me out, so it was kind of a thank you thing. Bruce Geitch himself had gone through some pretty serious physical, medical crap. At and this day and age, all this with COVID-19, a lot of people have. I mean, nobody's alone when it comes to getting sick at different times. So I mean, I put as much of my, I'm really thankful. Otherwise, I don't think I'd have made it through. It's behind me now, but when it was going on, I mean, I had a week where, and I'm not searching for modeling anything, but I was diagnosed with very, very aggressive cancer on a Monday, and my older son passed away on a Tuesday from the next day from esophageal cancer, and it was like, nice week, huh? It took me 2 years to write the song about him. I've never worked harder to try to get a song out from my insides, you know what I mean? And that's on the record. Anybody who hears the song, who knows the story, just goes, "Oh God, this is really cool." Really, really cool thing. I mean, because when you're writing songs, it's cathartic in some level. You're getting it out from inside, so it's not just eating you up.
No, that's one thing I'm always a huge proponent of listening to music as well, because when an artist really puts their true selves and really puts all these more difficult emotions in there, what you end up getting is something that really gives a tangible feeling to something that's very hard to describe for someone. So when you're talking about what it feels like to lose a son or lose a brother or lose anyone that you really love, and you're trying to describe what that feels like, people will relate to music. There's one song that came up from a band called Saul on their album this year called Rise as Equals. They're a hard rock alt metal band out of Iowa, and they wrote the song Brother about the two brothers, the singer and I think one of the guitarists. They lost their younger brother, and just trying to go through that kind of emotion, really describe it. It's so powerful. And it just really sticks out in your mind.
It takes a long time. It just takes a long time to really get that out, and to be able to really put that out there. I mean, making records and recording, playing guitar for me, playing keyboards for me, I look at it as a craft. It really is a craft. But if you work your craft long enough, eventually this thing comes down and goes boom, and it becomes art. And you got to give art a chance, because we don't create art. Art happens through us. We can create craft. Somebody told me years ago, a really great producer, he produced Billy Joel's first couple of records, and was a really, really good friend of mine, great producer. And he says, just remember, the first thing to go to tape is who you are and how you feel. After that, time, intonation, enunciation, all the things that we went to school to learn, right? But what you're really putting on tape is what's in your insides. That's why a lot of the newer music that's out is just so perfected that you're missing a lot of what that means. I mean, listen closely to Jimi Hendrix, and he wasn't the most in tune singer in the world, and he could have, I mean, you could remaster his stuff and retune his vocals, but it ain't Hendrix anymore. You can put auto tune on anything. And it becomes what it is, and it's all perfect. I remember the first time I heard a record that was completely auto-tuned, and I went, man, that's unbelievable. I didn't realize what it was. I just thought it was a country song, I think. Man, these guys sing in tune. Wow. And then after a little while, I went, wait a minute. And at the end of it, I went, that's the most amazing thing I've ever heard, and I don't want to hear it again. It hurt, Something felt, I had a pretty good song. It was a country song. And so it was actually a pretty deep song. It was all going on. All their vocals were all completely tuned. And I just went, I don't want to ever hear this again. This is pissing me off, because it's not real. And then you get somebody like Alison Krauss, who really sings that in tune already. The last thing that girl ever needs is a tuning machine.
Oh God, yeah, you're right on that one.
Oh man, could she it almost hurts so much. It's just so dead perfect in tune. And when you think about it, she's been playing violin all her life. And it's a fretless stringed instrument. You kind of have to tune on the fly as you go. And she just applied that chop to her vocals.
And there are so many people within music that do something like that, where they come up and they learn either different styles or they're influenced by many different genres and they blend them into what they're going for. And that just creates this whole entire new sound that is uniquely them. But it's all because of their upbringing. It's all because of their experiences and what happens. And when it comes to talking about the songs that are really overly perfected, auto-tuned to perfection to make sure they sound super crisp, I'm not the biggest fan of those either, just because you lose a lot of the emotion that comes out in there, especially in the vocals. And when I listen to more stuff within rock and metal, especially more like metalcore, where you have a lot of those more screaming, unclean vocals, it's not the fact of what they're saying. It's the fact that it's the roughness and the rawness in those vocals that create like an extra instrumental feel. And you really feel the emotion of that anger, of that depression, of that sadness within those, and more of a rougher sound. It really brings out more of that genuineness to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen to Sergeant Pepper and think of it as to how it is, as to say, if the same people did the same songs nowadays and produced them now the way they're producing records now, and think of all those things. I mean, I listened to a lot of Beatles just because, I've got satellite radio, so I listen to the Beatles channel a lot. Because, God, well, first of all, bass playing is always stellar. Yeah, McCartney's a good bass player. I mean, aside from all the rest, which is pretty obvious, his bass playing from the word go, from the very first thing I ever heard, I went, this bass player's dead in the pocket. He's great. But and you listen to it, it's not all really in tune. I read the news today. Oh boy, that's not in tune. But I wouldn't want to hear it any other way than the way it is. It's just so, listen to John Lennon's Imagine. It's not in tune, but my God, it's John Lennon. I mean, this guy's putting this stuff right there, and it can't be, you can't beat it with a stick. That kind of thing is just, for me, it's just insanely great.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that aspect. And especially when you look at music that came out like more 60s, 70s, 80s, where you had less of that tuning going on. It was more just how the singer sounded. You really got a lot more of that roughness, that rawness in there, and it gave a genuineness to those songs. Like with the Beatles, with McCartney and Lennon. Take a look at Queen with Freddie Mercury. I mean, his voice was absolutely impeccable, but if you recorded it in the way that stuff's recorded in 2020, you're not going to get nearly that same sound, because they had to work with what they had and just creating what they had with what they had. Oh my
Freddie,
God.
and actually all the real high parts on all his vocal stacks, that's the drummer. Do you know that?
Really?
The drummer sings all that real high stuff. I didn't know that until somebody told me that, 2 years ago, right around when the movie came out. Drummers deep into those vocals. It's not just Freddie, but Freddie could stack anything and get away with it. The guy was really an amazing musician. Crazier than a junkyard dog, but he was an amazing musician. It was really cool.
I'm gonna have to ask my brother on that one, because after the movie came out, he's always been a Queen fan, but he got even more into it at one point, where last year for Halloween in 2019, because he works at a bar on the campus of the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and he dressed up as Freddie Mercury, looking like he had the outfit from Live Aid, and they had him go up on the bar and sing Bohemian Rhapsody, with the bar just packed full of people. Unfortunately, I was not there that night, because I'm Milwaukee's in Madison, 70 miles away. I didn't want to go to a college town for a Halloween weekend, because I had stuff going on here. But I saw, someone sent me a rather, not the best quality cell phone video, but it was still just amazing just to see him just
still up. Probably your favorite movie at this point in the game.
Oh, I've got it saved somewhere. And I'm just holding on to that just for sheer reference at some point. You remember when you did that?
When you're really old and you're at Thanksgiving dinner with your brothers, say, hey man, how about this? Pull that out and see. I did what?
Oh, don't worry, Bill. I'm going to bring that up at Christmas this year already. I mean, even though it's only a little bit over a year old with that video, I'm still going to bring it up, because why not?
Yeah, I hear you talking, man. You're right on the money. It's great.
That's
cool. What are brothers for? But I gotta give him shit. Why? Because he's my brother. It's just the way it is.
Exactly. And it's even times too where like him and I, sometimes we have this completely different mindset, completely different moniker on different things as well. Even with music, where sometimes he's more into some more of the EDM stuff, where me more hard rock, heavy metal, metalcore, punk rock, that kind of stuff. But there's always some times where we can go back and it's like, okay, if we're going to go to a concert together, what are we going to go see? And it always ends up having its base somewhere in rock music, whether we're going to see something more more of like the older sense of rock with 60s, 70s, 80s kind of stuff, or we're going to see some kind of ska punk from the 90s where you're going to have those more rock instrumentations, but you're also going to have the brass section in the background as well. Cause I'm just gonna say this, those shows are fun as all hell. And I love going to those. So you get the music that he likes, get me with also the music I like, but also the shows I like. So it's like, yeah, this is perfect. And then we just have a blast doing that.
Funny, Tamara and I were thinking about moving to Austin quite a few years ago. And we went down, we stayed in a hotel for a day. We just went around. I just wanted to go check out, because I was a Stevie Ray Vaughan fan and dig a lot of the blues and some of the writers that come out of the Austin area, John Hyatt and different people like that. And we just went and said, well, let's go see if we can find that blues bar. Here's some really good blues. And every single bar was stage diving, and it was just whatever the music was lately. And then I realized it is a college town. I mean, it's not going to just be, Austin city limits.
Yeah.
It's going to be what it is. I kind of went, well, I have yet to find that blues bar we were looking for, but I sure found there's a lot of guys were playing kind of ska stuff, really, fast and frantic and jumping off the stage and doing all the craziness. So I remember there was a black comedian was talking about, now what's this stage, diving off the stage and having the audience catch you and run you around. He said, you go to a Luther Vandross concert, have him jump off the stage, everybody move out of the way and go, Lou, what are you doing? I ain't gonna catch him. It's like, there've been so many different things. I know you were talking earlier and you were saying, well, the different styles and the different things, but we're still dealing with 12 notes.
That is true. Everyone's dealing with those same 12 notes.
It's the same 12 notes. No matter what you do, there's 12 notes. So it's to try to make them happen. I had a guy talk to me years ago when I was a kid, and he says, never stop stealing. He says, because there's only 12 notes. And if somebody has a way of doing a style on the 12 notes, rip it off. Don't just rip off from him, rip off from everybody. If in the morning you like something that Ray Charles did, try to learn it. And if at night you hear something Willie Nelson did that you like, try to learn that. Eventually you'll forget where you stole it all, and your stuff will start cross ventilating inside. The next thing you know, you have your style.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I always talk with a bunch of the bands I interview on here is, especially with ones that people don't know, is, okay, what are your influences? And especially with all different members of the band, there's times where all different members of the band have influences in all completely different realms. And then I talk about how everyone has these different influences, but when you bring them together, one person's going to know exactly, let's say, how something with more of a funk background works, something more of a jazz background works, versus someone who has more of like a grunge or more alternative rock background. And then there's someone that has that classic hard rock background. Mixing that all together, you're going to get something that's going to end up being uniquely yours, but it came from so many different places that people have already created.
You're actually talking about my album at this point. All of those influences are definitely in there. I mean, I've been involved. I've got 2 R&B Song of the Year songwriting Grammys. One for Earth, Wind and Fire and one for George Benson. So I've been an R&B fan all my life, but there was always something about that guitar and that loud amplifier that really appealed to me. So I kind of learned to play pretty strong guitar, very hard guitar, at least live. And then somewhere along the line, I started listening to rhythm guitar players, and some of them are great. I mean, Keith, what's his name? How about forgetting Keith's name from the Stones? It's one of the best.
Keith Richards.
Yeah, he's one of the best rhythm guitar players on the earth. You check out what he's doing rhythmically, and it's like, oh my goodness. I watched a show. It was on TV, but it was a full show. Has a different tuning for every single song.
For a rhythm guitarist.
Rhythm, yeah, just on his rhythm guitar stuff. I mean, he has a different tuning, so he has a different guitar handed to him for almost every single song that he plays, because he comes up with these really cool tuning things. And that's kind of a way to back into, sort of stumble into some cool stuff, is just tune the guitar differently than you normally do. I'm not that guy. I usually keep it pretty regular, normal tuning. And I mean, because for me, I really loved playing drums when I was a kid. And that lent itself to all kinds of different instruments. Well, I'm probably primarily in the scene. I'm primarily known as a singer, but other than that, I'm primarily known as an organ player, Hammond organ player. And I remember where I was the first time I heard a jazz organist. Jimmy Smith. It was just insane. He had a big number one hit playing organ. And it was when I was on AM radio. So I mean, man, I immediately copped stuff from him. I'd hear him play something. I'd learn how to play it on guitar. If I'd hear a guitar player play something, I'd learn how to play it on guitar and on piano and on keyboards. And after a while, it just sort of everything cross references. And vocally, if I can play it, I can usually sing it.
Oh, easily. And even kind of bringing myself in there a little bit in the mix. When I was a kid, when I was about 10 years old, I started playing drums. I gave it up after I was 14 because I wanted to go play sports instead when I got into high school. Probably shouldn't have done that at this point if this is what I'm doing, but there was always one thing I always love about with the drums is just I love the fact that, I could just pound on something, get a little bit of that anger out, and it was loud and it was heavy and I loved every aspect of it. But the one thing that always, and I just realized,
your neighbors were really liked it too, didn't they?
My parents absolutely were enamored with it. My brother was so happy with my drumming that he would consistently put his hands over his ears anytime that I was playing. I mean, he loved it that much. But I just realized this where there was something where the snare drum that I had for my beginner drum set, the snare was never super tight. It was always kind of loose. So it always had this harder, more just really raw rattle to it. And I never could really tighten it up for some reason. I tried so many different things. And I just couldn't get it to get tight the way I wanted it to be, just so that it was back to normal. But then thinking about it, whenever I started listening to punk rock and I heard that just raw snare sound in there, it was so powerful. And it reminded me of all the times that I was playing drums and just hitting it and trying to figure out why I also like that raw snare at the same time too. Yeah. And then it just made so much sense. And all of a sudden I dove headfirst into punk rock. And when I was 14, 15, I'm just like, no, I get it. And it's an epiphany moment right here.
Yeah, you go to the studio with any of these really big time drummers, whether it be Vinny or even in the old days, Jeff Porcaro, who was one of the he really wrote the book, in terms of studio drumming. Kenny Aronoff, all those guys. You look at their stash. I mean, they'll get cartage to bring in their drums. You look at their stash, and there's usually about 10 snare drums. And what do you want? How do you want this song to sound? You want a tight piccolo snare, which is sort of like you would hear nowadays in marching bands. Did you ever see that movie Drumline?
Yeah.
The snares were so high. I mean, they were pulled tighter than Joan Rivers's face. or I should have said Nancy Pelosi. I saw her one time. She had so many pull. It looked like a piccolo snare over her cheekbone. Wow, man! Be careful. If it gets cold, it's going to crack just like a snare drum head. but you can get those, and then you get these. I think the Eagles of Don Henley used to play with a lower, kind of a lower fat, real kind of a fat snare drum sound. And I know when I go to Alan Hertz, who actually played on my record and mixed it. He's a great drummer and a monstrous mixer. I mean, he really mixed the record great. But he has this big thing. It's all with wooden. We didn't use it on the record because it was not quite the music that I wanted to use, what I wanted to do. And then there's all kinds of different ways of making that snare happen. A lot of different ways. A lot of drummers play with a rim shot on the 2 and 4. A lot of them just play middle of the drum, classic drumming, and it just goes on and on. That's why I gave it up. I couldn't. I mean, they started having such good equipment that my playing started sucking because I really played a lot better when the foot pedal was just an old piece of, old Camco, the little, I'd break them all the time. And now they've got them where they're chain driven and you really have to have chops to play them correctly. So I just went, I'm going to stay off the drums at this point. It just doesn't make any sense for me to play anymore. So I gave it up just like you did, not for sports, but I figured that, I'm doing better just playing an organ and singing this stage of the game and guitar.
I thought about getting back into drums, just trying to buy an e-drum kit just so that it wouldn't be super loud and wouldn't take up as much space with smaller limited
nice
accommodations.
To work with a lot. Yeah.
My problem is I was like, you know what? I could use that money somewhere else, but also the fact of the matter is I still would probably play loud enough to get complaints from my neighbors, so that might not necessarily be the best idea.
Yeah. Well, you can get into cans. You know, I usually, for some of the stuff that I do, I'll do drums, but I'll do them on a keyboard. You know, the bass drum is down at a low C. Snare drum is the C sharp, D, E flat, E, F, and F sharp. Different kind of, you know, one of them's a cross stick and stuff like that. So I can go ahead and do that. But I've been thinking about getting E drums to plug into my computer, so I can actually play some of these things in rather than playing like that. Hey, nice drum part. Yeah.
So yeah, I did it like this.
Yeah, just playing like that. It's like, okay, I got it. But the only reason I do that is just to get this is the feel I want on the song, and then I get a drummer to go, you hear what I did? Great. Throw me out and you replace it. You know, because a real drummer is going to have a better vibe on it. You know.
Yeah, but when it comes to creating the sound that you want, I mean, when it comes to really fully embodying the whole entire song, you're really forcing yourself to know every single part and figure out exactly what you want, to the point where after you write that drum part just on your keyboard, all of a sudden when it comes time to actually record it, bring it to an actual drummer, be like, or a studio drummer, be like, hey, this is what I want on this. And then all of a sudden they're able to do some little bit more technical things with a drum kit that's going to end up making it sound the way that you really want it to sound, and then some.
Right. Well, you know, I just leave fills. I mean, I just put down boom, bap, boom, boom, check on, boom, boom, bap. And that's sort of gives the drummer an idea. He could go boom, boom, bam, you know, he can add these other little fluffs and fills and stuff that really make it sound great. You know, I wish I could play them. I ain't that good, but I know what I want. I just know I can't really play it. So with me, a computer will do most of the work, and hit the little input quantize. I'll play it and it'll be a little out of time, and the thing will just put it right together. And yep, that's what I want. The swing factor is 17%. I'm cool with it, and then the drummer knows where I want to put it. And plus, I usually put all my rhythm guitars, basses, you know, whether I'm playing, you know, Fender bass or whether I'm playing keyboard bass, I've kind of already laid down where the pocket is. And then, and at that point again, the drummer, if he can't figure that one out, get another drummer. You know, the way I look at it.
Exactly. And when it comes to like letting the drummer kind of create some of those more fills as well, what I like about that is especially after they're able to listen to the song a couple of times, really understand the direction of it. Because a lot of times, especially within rock and metal, like those fills are used to transition from one part of the song to the next. And when you understand how each piece of the song is working, especially as a drummer, then you're gonna be able to create a fill that's gonna accurately and properly transition from one part to the next without overpowering it or underselling it going into that next part of the song, whether it's from a verse to a pre-chorus to a chorus, or just like a chorus kind of coming out of it into maybe a post-chorus, or going back into right before you get back into that second verse.
I always have fun with bridges. Every once in a while, I'll take a bridge and put the bass drum on 2 and 4, just to make something different. And very rarely works. I'll just tell the drummer, go give me 4 on the floor there, leaving the bass drum out on the ones and threes. Some about it, you know, and at least in my music, doesn't really work. In reggae, it works great. You know,
because leaving it out on the 1 and the 3, that just sounds like something that, of course, on paper, when you think about it, it's not going to make sense. You always want to make sure that that bass drum is either on 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 and 3 to kind of keep it going and have the snare be on the 2 and the 4. However, if you try and kind of reverse it, it is a different sound. It's going to give you a completely different vibe, but it might work out. It might not. It all depends upon the direction of the song and the feel of it.
I always find if I do that, I'm immediately going cheat, just going. I don't want to. It's not what I wanted to do, so I'll go back and redo the drums, so I don't find myself trying to smoke a big fatty and all that, roll all the sticks and stems and seeds into it, get that reggae thing going. It's pretty nutty. I mean, I love what reggae did. That first couple of Marley records were just insanely great, just how much the pocket was. But the guy who was really setting up a lot of what that groove was the left hand of the organist. The organist, and that really kind of just provided a lot of what that forward motion was in reggae, which was really, really cool.
But another big key with what you just said there is the fact that you understand where that came from and why that added so much to Bob Marley's music, so that if you're going to try and add some of that kind of influence into what you're doing, you understand really what the driving point behind it was, so that you can play around with it more and really get that kind of sound that really makes that reggae feel pop.
Well, you begin to see. I mean, Alan Hertz, who was my drummer on a good portion of the record, and mixer for all of the record, almost all the record, and I've brought stuff to him before. I said, well, what do I'm going to do real fast. So it was a ska, really a fast ska kind of thing. And Alan was so cool. He can play jazz for days. But he can turn around and if you're doing like a ska thing, he knows all the devices that make that happen. If you're doing a slow reggae thing, he knows all the devices that make that happen. He was a close friend of Zigaboo Model S, who played on there with the early meters. And that, so he's, you get a guy that, I think a lot of what it comes down to is you kind of begin to understand what the devices are, what the actual devices are that really can move a feel from one thing to the other. Because at this stage of the game, the feel it's everything. It's what the whole thing is about. How does it feel? I got 3 tunes on the record that were basically programmed to start with by a guy named Greg Matheson. Now he played piano with Larry Carlton. He actually produced a handful of really good stuff. He and I have been writing songs. Actually, he and I co-wrote probably Al Jarreau's last real radio hit, a song called "Just to Be Loved." It was a jazz thing, but his tracks, when he does like an R&B track, it's ridiculous. It's so deep in the pocket. It's just unbelievable. Every drummer that plays on it goes, "Oh, this is going to be just a day at the beach. I'm going to have a ball with this." Because there's no question about where it is. You know what I mean? And with a lot of music, a lot of people just don't quite get exactly where it is. They think close is good enough. Nah. There's just got to, I talked to Jim Keltner, who played with Traveling Wilburys, a great drummer, been around for years, really knows it, but he's always really known for playing on the very back end. I mean, not dragging it, but as close you can get on the back of it, because the beat's this big. You can play it here or play it here. And Jim just plays it back here. And I said, where did you get that back feel? Because I just love it. It's just so great about it. He says, actually, 2 different drummers were the people that I listened to that made that happen for me. And one of them was the drummer with AC/DC. He said, man, that guy plays back here, just on the back end. And then the rhythm guitar player plays just a teeny bit on the front end. And that's what causes all the AC/DC's music to just groove like a dog. And the other one, he says, is Ringo Starr. He said, Ringo plays it here. He says, man, and it just always impressed me. He says, Ringo's a way better drummer than a lot of people know about.
And I think the reason for that is just because when you take a look at the Beatles, everyone's going to know Lennon, McCartney, and then George Harrison right after it. So Ringo always ends up being the forgotten one of the 4. However, you can never discount what he actually brought to the band, because without him, the Beatles wouldn't have been the Beatles. Maybe not as impactful as someone like McCartney or Lennon, but you needed Ringo there in order to make that work.
Well, what Ringo apparently said to Jim, and I'm paraphrasing, I didn't get it right. He said, well, I heard some of the Beatles, live tapes and stuff with Pete Best playing. It was the guy that had the gig before Ringo got it. And he was on the front end all the time. And you paid attention to this forward motion, which was kind of cool, more like a Michael Jackson record. Those things are really militarily in front, and it's grooving like a dog is a different thing, different kind of thing. So what Ringo said was, these songs are too good to play too fast or to rush. To go on the back end of it makes the song more important. Boing, big smart move, very smart thing, and he was aware of that early on. He wasn't just the 4th mop head, mop top, little cute little Beatle, No, he understood how to make all those songs have a certain feel so that you just unforgettable grooves, you know what I mean?
Oh, and when it comes down to it too, a lot of the music that has come out since the Beatles were prominent and disbanded. The Beatles are still a prominent force because everyone takes inspiration from them at some point. They're just that big, whether it's from how George Harrison plays guitar to Ringo playing on the back end to how McCartney perfected that bass style to the different vocal sounds and how songs with Lennon on lead vocals would work versus how songs with McCartney on lead vocals would work. There's so many intricacies there that they just perfected to the point where each album came out, and I mean, it was a smash hit every step of the way. I don't think they put out a bad album ever.
What's really cool is what I kind of gathered. I mean, I was listening. Tamara and I were driving up to play a Suns gig up in San Francisco, and we happened to, we have the Beatles channel on, and it was Peter Asher was presenting the top 100 voted, satellite radio votes for the top 100 Beatles songs, and he said, at some point they were. Everybody was very, they were kind of blown out that they really couldn't. I mean, you would talk about a quarantine and a lockdown. Those guys couldn't leave the house and just go down to the store and buy an ice cream cone and come home. They'd be just swamped, and some, I think Lennon kind of sat there and he was writing really cool stuff, but he kind of sat there and was thinking about how popular they were. And McCartney was practicing the piano. He became a great piano player over that period of time. So, I mean, you get some musicians that are just, I'm not going to stay where I was. I mean, I'm not the biggest Neil Young fan in the world, but I kind of dig the fact that he had a record called Harvest. I think it was something Harvest. And it was all these kind of back tempos, and they had a hit on it and everything. His manager said, give me a second record just like that. We can end up in Dodger Stadium with this kind of shit, And he just went, no, I really feel like doing a country album next. I'm going to actually do Crazy Horse, the band that he had. And anytime, the marketing, arm of his career was like, I'll stick with it for just a little longer so I can make a little more money. And he'd go, I want to do this now. So, I mean, it's sort of like the way Johnny Depp was taking acting parts, or Bruce Willis. And, these guys, I know I made some money doing this and this was all happening, but I'm going to go over and do, from Die Hard to 12 Monkeys. That's a sweep, And that's why, I kind of like, there's certain artists that I really like just because they do that, I did this style. I made this kind of record. Now I'm going to do this style and make this kind of record. And the marketing people are going, God damn it. Just give me another one just like that. And that's what I kind of dug about the era that you're talking about when the music was kind of cool, is that the promotion, the promo campaign was wrapped around the artist. You know what I mean? That because the artist was this, like Bob Dylan or the Beatles or, Leonard Cohen or anybody. They wrapped the promo campaign around them. Now you have bands and they have to fit into the already existing promo campaign. That's a big difference. It's really hard to get, quote, stars, or not, stars might not be the word for it, but it's hard to get, keep going. The next album does really well. Next album does really well. Maybe not giant, but just keep going. It's hard to get that when you're trying to be what 5 other bands have already been.
I don't think I could put it any better way than you just described it, where now it's, instead of marketing campaigns being wrapped around the artist, it's the artist having to be wrapped around those campaigns that have already been set. And especially now within rock metal, especially the bands that I listen to, there are very few bands that have consistently tried new things, changed up some styles, and really didn't follow within whatever the certain marketing campaign was, and have really broken out of it to the point where they pretty much have autonomy to do whatever they want to do now. And 2 examples that come to my mind is, one is the band Bring Me the Horizon, because they started with this heavy deathcore sound. They went more metalcore, then more of this hard rock sound. Then last year they had an album that was a lot more pop oriented. I wasn't a big fan of it, but then all of a sudden this year they came out with an EP, and it's like they literally threw everything they've ever done and put it all into one and tried so many different things, and each song was an absolute smash hit. The other one I can think of is the band Falling Reverse with their lead singer Ronnie Radke, where he's done so many different things, just trying to come up with so many different ideas, mixing so many different genres into all of his songs, to the point where they put out only 4 or 5 new songs in the past 3 years, And from last year to this year, their listenership, especially on Spotify with their stats, has doubled. And they only put out 5 songs in the past 3 years.
Yeah. Well, if they're the right 5 songs, it's worth it. As a songwriter, I was living in Nashville for a while because I know there's a lot of songwriting going on. And I hear quite a few different people say, "Oh man, I wrote 30 songs today." And my answer is, any of them any good? If I wrote one this year that really gets on the radio and people really relate to and stuff like that, I'm a happy guy. You know what I mean? It's to write 30 songs and then cut them. And the demos, at least in Nashville, the demos are all usually cut by the same guys. They'll cut 5 or 6, 7, maybe 8 songs in a day. And, just look at the charts, which are the numbers, rather than actual Italian music. And you go, that the verse of song number 1 is exactly the same as the verse of song number 4. And song number 3's got the same chorus as song number 5. And, after a while, you just kind of go, I'd rather spend one day working on one song and making it special rather than this is it. We can't go beyond this because the powers that be won't allow it.
Yeah, and
that in country music. Well, man, I just want 3 chords and the truth. Well, the truth part I like. 3 chords, that ain't enough to keep me happy. I mean, if you're doing a real blues, great. Or a real one simple country song, but 3 chords, give me a break. I know more than that.
Yeah, and when it comes to, from my standpoint as well, as a fan of this music, instead of someone that writes it, if it's something where all of a sudden, I have to wait a couple, it's like all of a sudden, yeah, you're making an album, all of a sudden you have to wait like 3 or 4 more years than I'd expect, and all of a sudden it comes out and it's something that is truly spectacular, that whoever the artist is put so much time, effort, and attention to detail and everything to make sure it came out the way that they wanted. I'm much more happy with that than getting 2 or 3 albums within that time frame that were kind of forced on or pushed because they had to meet a deadline that the record company wanted them to meet.
Yeah. Well, usually there's the classic story of the sophomore, right? The sophomore record.
Oh, yeah.
You spent the whole early part of your career just working to get that record deal, building the songs, playing them live, finding what works, and just really honing your stuff. And you get the record out and it's a slammer hit. Then you got to have a second one, 6 months. The last one took you 6 years to put together. Now you got 6 months to do the second one. And that's been thrown at many people. It's been thrown at me. It's been thrown at everybody at different times. The second album maybe might not have quite the attention paid to it that the first one did. So and you just kind of deal with it however you can. That's my dog. It's my co-producer. I've done half of my vocals with this dog in my lap. Because I got my keyboard for the Pro Tools. Behind that, I've got a piano. I've got a microphone coming in here, and I can just punch in a number 3. I sit at a chair. It's like an office job at some level. I don't think I've stood up to sing a song in a long time. And somebody said, you'll sing better if you stand up. I said, yeah. Tell that to Elton John. Tell that to Ray Charles. Tell that to Billy Joel. These guys are all sitting down to sing. So, and I've been, sitting on an organ bench singing forever, and I know in Chicago for a while I was standing up to play. And at one point, I think I got a hernia or something crazy. I really couldn't stand up all that long. So I started sitting down again. I realized I was playing way more concisely. Standing up at a piano, or playing a guitar,
Yeah.
Frank Zappa said, anybody's playing one of those, handheld keyboards is trying to get the same blowjobs as the guitar players. What's going on? And of course, who said that? Frank Zappa.
Oh, of course.
Of course. That pretty much stands to reason. One clever man. It was amazing guy.
But when it comes to, knowing the fact that when you're sitting down that you play more concise, you play more precise, and you play better to what you want to do, that takes a lot of self-awareness to know, okay, if people are going to say, oh, maybe you're going to play better standing up, or maybe you're going to sing better standing up, but knowing that you do that a lot better while sitting down and just maintaining that, that just speaks true to your craft, that you know exactly what you want to do, and that whenever you're writing something, that you know exactly how to produce it, how to make it work, and when it comes to playing it live, you're going to get the same result.
Exactly. You know, and there's this whole kind of thing about showmanship. You know, you gotta do this and you gotta do that. And there was a little small band. It wasn't a great band. It was a little rock band. Was playing this little club in Marin County where I was, I kind of grew up there. I mean, musically, I grew up there. And they said, hey, man, we're playing at this place called the Lion Share. We're playing up, Thursday night. You want to come by and hear the band? I said, I will. Normally I don't kind of do that much, but I'll come here. Yeah, I'll see what you guys sound like. They seem like a nice guy. So they were there. They were playing a set. And I was going, these guys are good. It's happening. And at some point, there was a 300 capacity in the club. There were maybe 35, 40 people there. But Van Morrison walked in, drunker than a skunk. This was back when Van was still drinking. And he lived in Marin County for a long time. So he comes in and at some point they say, hey, you want to jam? Sure. He could barely walk. But he kind of got up, hung onto the mic stand and sang. And I was mesmerized. There was no show. He was just so in love with what he was doing that it went past alcohol and went past everything. He was just scary, amazing. And I couldn't take my eyes off him. I went, wow. And I'd known Van for years and I've seen him play for years. But at this one time, I just realized it just kind of showed me it's not so much about moves and throwing shapes. It's about presence. If you have a certain presence, you don't need to do anything. Jerry Garcia never moved on the stage, but he'd play one note and the audience would go apeshit crazy because it was Jerry playing it, and it's insane, but that's the way it is. I think there's a certain amount. Neil Young doesn't do a whole lot, but his audience is just crazy.
And I think one of the biggest reasons why that works is when you're listening to the music, it's how the artist that's on stage performing, how their presence on stage affects and works within the theme and the flow and the feel of the music that they're playing, and that transcends to the audience as well. For myself, I love going to those shows, those insane shows, where people are jumping off the stage, where there are mosh pits all over the place.
Oh, that's another art form right there.
Oh, yeah, I've got injury stories that, I've got I have a couple of black eyes, huge cut above my eye to the point where I probably should have gotten stitches, but didn't, almost broke my nose because someone had hit me with a flying elbow. I've had it a lot happen to me and probably will have a lot more happen to me once concerts return, hopefully in 2021. Yeah. But it all depends upon also,
talking mosh pit action, right?
Yeah. And when it comes to a lot of these bands, it's, they're up on stage and they're playing this harder, fast paced, really angry, energetic music at the same time as well. But their stage presence, if it matches it, it just amps up the crowd so much more and the fans get so much more into it. Now, if you're playing a much softer, somber sound and you're going to bring that stage presence on there as well, you're going to have the exact same effect in terms of that emotional connection between the artist, the music, and the crowd itself.
If you look like what you're playing, I think is what you're saying. I got you there. I mean, it's funny. I've got an oncologist. He's actually a relatively young, very brilliant American Chinese guy who's insane music freak. He's a gone music freak. And I became aware of him because my radiation guy said, well, I know a guy he's developed, him and some of his people have developed a really cool chemo for just what you got. So you got to meet him. Steve Wong is his name. And he said, I went to school with him, but I hadn't seen him for years. I ran into him at a mosh pit at House of Blues one time. And I said, really? He said, yeah. So I talked to him, and he's become a pretty good friend. I see him every 3 months. And he just says, hey, I'll go to a real serious butt-kicking mosh pit punk rock thing and love it just as much. And the next night I'll go see the LA Symphony do Beethoven. And he digs it just as much. I mean, this is one of the few guys I've ever met who virtually loves music, any kind. And he's that way. I mean, if it's a real energetic band and jumping off the stage, he's down in the mosh pit just screaming, just getting off on it in the exact same groove as the band. Really cool guy. I introduced him to Michael McDonald on a couple of benefits that we did, and he just loved hanging with Mike, and and Michael's such a sweetie pie that it was nice of him to spend some time with Steve. So I mean, it's, every once in a while you run into a music fan that just loves everything. It just doesn't make any difference. I just rediscovered Tchaikovsky and Beethoven in the last couple of years. Like, whoa, this is so beautiful. I mean, this stuff is really cool. And I think a lot of it might have to do with this COVID thing. Is I got no place to go. So in some ways, it's kind of raised my attention span. You know what I mean? There's another question, and you might be able to help me with. I know that when we were younger, when the bands were coming out, when just it didn't make any difference who, Led Zeppelin or whatever, it was really cool that you took the album home, you put it on your stereo, and you and your friends are listening to it and going, "Whoa, man, dig! Listen to what listen to what Bonham did there. Oh, dig that drum!" And everybody's kind of listening together. Now everybody's in cans. Nobody's listening together to anything. And I always thought that would raise your attention span if you're listening with your friends or with your wife or with your girlfriend, or if more than one person is listening at the same time. And I think that's something that music's missed a little bit, that sharing of it.
Oh, I've got a couple ideas on this, so get ready for this one, Bill, because when it comes down to it, it is a lot different instead of when it comes to listening to music with your friends than when you're listening to it just by yourself with headphones on. Because when you listen to yourself with headphones on, if it's something that you're just not enjoying right away, you have the ability to change it. But if you're listening with your friends, you're going to want to listen to the whole thing because someone might be enjoying it or listen to a whole song, so that you might end up picking up on something that you like later on, and then you guys are able to talk about it as well. If you're just listening to it yourself, you're kind of just invested in what you want to hear. And if it doesn't hit right away, you're going to just not listen to it. So that's where that loss comes in. But another big loss comes into where everything is done streaming now through Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. And I've actually talked about this before, and I'm a huge proponent of this, to where when it comes to streaming, people listen to like the first 5-6 seconds of a song or 5-6 seconds of an album. And if they don't really just resonate with it right away in those 5-6 seconds, they change it and they never listen to it again. And it's different than when you're buying a physical album, like you're buying a CD, buying a vinyl album, or even downloading them from iTunes back when you download MP3s, because you're putting money behind it. You're actually having an investment in it, so you want to get that return on your investment. Exactly. So you're going to listen to the whole thing a couple of times. You're going to really get into those deep tracks and really understand them. Not a lot of people do that because it's all single driven now, because you want to make sure as a band, you're constantly within the Spotify playlist. You're constantly in the attention span of these companies and of their algorithms and of the fans as well. So there's just not as much investment from the fans, or need investment from the fans to listen to the songs if they don't hit exactly the way you want.
I agree. Absolutely. You're nailing it to the wall. It's perfect. Because it's what we're looking at is attention span, I think, in a lot of ways. So a lot of music, people say, hey, cut to the chase. Let's get to the chorus quicker. Let's get to the thing we're selling as quick as we can, so we don't lose listeners. I mean, my album's 14 songs long, and I've played it for a friend of mine. He says, you might want to just take 6 songs and send it out to people to listen to, so they aren't knocked out by 14 songs. And I just say, hey, shit, play 3 of them, but just play 1 of them and you'll get it. I mean, that song that Reason to Believe, I mean, that's the opening song on the record. If that doesn't suck you into the next song, nothing will. And the next song is funkier than a 3-day-old Band-Aid.
Yeah, it is. Oh yeah, it is.
Like I read online, somebody said, that's so funky, you move in next door and your lawn dies. That's cool. In terms of funk, I take pictures with people. I say, especially when you're talking about politics and stuff like that. Man, I was kind of looking forward to a Clinton in the White House. George Clinton, the leader of Parliament and P-Funk,
Yeah.
I wanted to see George Clinton, act one funky mofo, man. Kind of bad to the bone, Anyway, I don't know. Like we said, tangents. We just went
off on tangents. And one thing I do want to make sure we hit on is Reason to Believe, because that is the first single that's coming off the album. And like what you're saying, where if this isn't going to suck you into the second song, I don't know what will. And I will say this: after listening to Reason to Believe, I, as someone who likes a much harder sound for hard rock, punk rock, metalcore, again, telling you this so that there's context behind it. After listening to Reason to Believe, I was sucked into that second song already. So it definitely has that power as well. And a lot of it is from two things. One is a certain construction with the electric guitar that you put in there, and also your vocals are as well on there. Because when I was listening to it, there was, especially from the intro, the guitar kind of comes in a little bit soft, and there's a small inclusion on there. And the whole entire time after I heard the intro, I thought this was going to continue, and I was hoping for it because it gave the song this little bit of a rock vibe to it and more potential for a little bit more pace, a little bit more substance overall. And I expect to see, and I was like, okay, let's see how this turns out. First verse, right at the beginning, I'm like, okay, it's kind of staying calmer. Again, kind of staying with a little bit lower point. I'm hoping that at some point, like, okay, seeing where that intro was, seeing where this first verse started, kind of hoping it picks up because I heard what that intro is. It definitely has the power to do it. And as it kept going up and up, all of a sudden the keyboards start coming in a little bit more. The rest of the instrumentals, the acoustic guitar, the drums start coming more, and it just kind of increases that vibrato of the song to get to the chorus, and it just puts it all out there in a little bit more of a melodic sense. You add a much more fuller orchestral feel to it, but it really gives the song this full substance. And then, of course, after coming out of the first chorus, there is just a little bit of a slight electric guitar in there, and I'm like, okay, this is perfect because it really gives that rock vibe to it, and it kept holding that throughout the whole entire song where it just had this power, had this vigor, that it was melodic at the same time, but also really powerful throughout the whole entire build of the instrumentals from verse to pre-chorus to chorus.
Well, I look at hard guitar as I think the same way that that composers would look at cello. Now, you into Hendrix at all? You've checked out any of the Jimi Hendrix stuff? But there was one thing back when his first record came out. I did a song called "Hey Joe," which I'd heard the song before by somebody else. But there was a point where it went ba-da 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 ba-da, you know, and it doubled the bass with low guitar, and I was just going, that is cool. So I do a lot of. That's really cool. It just has this, it moves everything right forward. And in that same way that you're talking about, the same way with really hard rock. And that's one of the things that I think is like we were talking about devices. That's a device that I just love. I do as much, I mean, without doing it too much, I try to find sections of different songs where that really happens, where you really move it along that way. And Bruce Skyches is good at that as anybody on guitar. He's a great guitar player.
Yeah, and I was saying, understanding that device, it really brought someone that has more of that hard rock likeness and more of that hard rock pedigree like myself into this song, just using that subtle device just to really add to it. I mean, it was something that, like I said, right when I heard that first part of it, and then in the intro, and then coming out of the first chorus, I heard it. It was just something that stuck out to me. It wasn't as hard as something that, I always would listen to, but it was something that just drew me right into the song right from there and had me intrigued throughout the whole entire thing. It kept my attention through everything on it, and it was so subtly in there. It was perfectly placed.
Cool, great. Dude, the 15th song on there is a song called Slave to the Medicine. Down your alley. You're going to absolutely go crazy when you hear this because it's just powerful as hell, and it's almost prog in a way, but it's still got an R&B feel to it, and it's actually not going on the album in the United States. It's going. I did it for two. They needed 2 bonus tracks for Japan, so I went ahead and mixed a couple of bonus tracks. But that one has got this. That's got the stuff that you're looking for. It'll knock you out. When next time you put up the SoundCloud, just go to song 15 and play it, and you'll get what I mean. It's crazier than a junkyard dog is what it is. You'll love it because it just like bites you in the leg, man. It's a powerful piece,
Yeah, because I saw there was only supposed to be 14 songs, and I'm like, I'm gonna stick to those 14. So when I do pull up that song, I'm definitely have to pull up that bonus track because if you're saying this is something that's right down my alley, especially after hearing me talk about what I really liked about Reason to Believe, I mean, I gotta go check it out. It's kind of a guarantee at this point.
Yeah, good. You'll like it. There's a lot of different things on it. There's even one song I didn't even put bass or drums on. A song called A Stevie Song, and it was basically a song that I wrote kind of about everybody's out, yelling on the streets. They're yelling for this. You're yelling for that. I want Trump. I want Biden. I want this. I want that. Just yelling all the time. I was going, maybe, I'm thinking about, well, what's everybody listening to these days? Yelling. That's the music. There's maybe something in the music is making people yell too much, Time to, sometimes you get up, you really you can see around certain things culturally if you just quiet down just that much, just for a second, and just kind of listen to it. Yeah, you'll hear the song when you go. It's just it's one of those little pieces that just goes differently. It just goes to a different place.
Yeah, and
then right after it, there's another rock and roll thing right after it. This got I did most of the rhythm guitar on the record. So that's kind of a cool thing. I think you'll like the record. It'll grow on you.
I listened to it I listened to reasonably probably about 6 or 7 times when I was trying to figure out like what my thoughts are on it. I did listen to the rest of the record one time through. I didn't listen to the bonus tracks. I wanted to just get a quick like idea of exactly what I thought with the record. I do want to jump back quickly to Reasonably because one other thing I said that I really liked about this track was your vocals, because I had listened to stuff you've done with Chicago as well, especially the more prominent tracks that you were the vocalist on. So I'm like, okay, just to kind of get what I'm expecting and then jumping into this. And what really stood out to me was just the power and just the energy that was behind your vocals as it grew into the song. Because of course, with that first chord, with the first part of the verse, it's a little bit more softer. So I'm like, okay, we're getting kind of something we expect. But then all of a sudden, it just starts to build and just starts to build overall, especially with even some backing vocals as well. Because when you get to the chorus, there is just so much life with this melodic construction in your vocal style. I absolutely loved it because there's just a lot of power in there. And you really feel it like what a lot of people would feel like back when you were with Chicago. So you're going to really get that powerful feel, and then even more some because there's more behind it in my mind. You really feel that the message that these people in your life that you're so thankful for and you have all this gratitude towards are the reason to believe and keep going. It's so prominent because that energy is there in your vocals. You can really feel it. So the message in the song really comes out not only with the words that you're saying, but also with the power of your vocals. And that was something that drew me in instantly right when I heard it as well.
Yeah. I've been singing a long time. I don't know what to say. But I do, I went ahead and did the backgrounds, and my wife Tamara helped me with that because she's on the song, and it was really kind of a cool thing to go. I'm gonna wait a day and do the lead just on my own, knock that off, and get out of the I'm a background guy and get into the I'm a lead guy. And it's kind of made this time it made a real difference. That song's really cool. I mean, the minute we heard that track, whoa, we're on this one right away.
Oh, it was a smart move to stay on that one. And one thing I always do when I really go in deep in these tracks, I always look at, of course, meaning instrumental vocals, and then I always kind of put it in overall. If you keep seeing me turn my head, it's because I wrote all this down because I don't want to mess it up. So for Reason to Believe, just for all the fans out there ready to listen to it, I wrote, overall, I think the fans that have followed Bill for many years will listen to this and think that he has even more energy now than he ever had writing song. The inclusion of the electric guitar in this track was much subtler than you would think would work, but it gave enough to the instrumentation to add substance to it and add to the vocal power while giving those vocals center stage at the same time as well. The way Bill sends us into the chorus 3 different ways with how his vocals work to pick up in that energetic chorus is going to put the fans on notice once again that Bill is on top of his game.
Well, thank you. That's really cool. I mean, somebody else would say, hey, that's great. Hey, rock star, take out the trash. That's a famous line. But yeah, I mean, that there's a build factor in that song. There's one point where I pulled the backgrounds out and just did and just let one scream, and I went, well, this should pretty much put the cherry on the cupcake. This is, it was a real, for me, I was kind of proud of the lead vocal on that record because it did this. The whole record just takes off like an airplane. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the groove, when you get to the second verse, that's George on bass and Vinny Colaiuta on drums, and that just you can't. There's a lot of guys can try to play that, but very few of them play it like he does. There's no question about it. So it's when I'm writing over that and singing over that, oh yeah. I mean, I have had a saying that the drummer's job is to excite the singer, whose job is to excite the audience. and it just goes like that. If the drummer's exciting the singer's going to go that extra mile. And when you sing over the drummers I get on my records, it's happening. It would be really going on. And there's, like I say, for you, for where I'm kind of getting a vibe of what you kind of like, man, Slave to the Medicine is going to kill you.
Oh boy.
It's in 3. It's actually it's gonna be down. And because we originally did it as we were planning on doing a second Wonderground album, and the Wonderground record, I just went, I want to do a solo record now, but I know I need 2 extra tracks, so I stole a couple from the band, and that was one of them. And we always liked it. This is just totally going on, and you'll dig it a lot. Gary plays some serious in-your-face guitar on it, and the song afterwards, I played some pretty serious guitar on it. So, those 2 songs might be. You may have to look around, try to find a Wonderground album, because there's a lot of that, a lot of the really pretty hard rock stuff going on in that record. Still melodic, always melodic. But we used a lot more hard guitars on Wonderground than I did on the solo album.
I'll definitely listen to both those bonus tracks. And then when it came to listening to just the album without the bonus tracks, I did a little quick snippet review of it just because I wanted to have a little bit more of a full substance for it, for people to get either excited or be like, okay, what's this album about? So what I wrote for this one was, again, looking over here to make sure I don't mess it up. Overall, when it comes to the new album, Living for Love, I think fans are going to get what they are hoping for instrumentally from Bill and then some, because you're going to get this vast range of like jazz rock, rock and roll, some funk, some R&B. You're going to get a lot of this different stuff in there. But it's going to have a lot of diversity as well, and it's going to be great. Just trust me on this. But what really stands out to me is the most the previous works that you've done was your vocals, because that alone, with the energy that was behind them, really adds so much to all these songs and gives that instrumental diversity so much more life and so much more vigor overall. So if fans that have been following you from your days in Chicago, from your days of doing stuff even before that and after that, I think they're really going to have a good time listening to this record through and through, from song 1 all the way to song 14.
Great, man. Thank you so much. I think you listen to it. You got, even though you're into some hard rock, a lot of people that are just don't have ears, and you got ears. You're listening for form, and form is, I think, the thing around which we build all of our music.
I'll say thank you for saying that, because I mean, when I started doing this stuff, like about little bit over almost 2.5 years ago. I was coming from a place where I just listened to music, and if I liked it, I liked it. If I didn't, I didn't. I really didn't know why, and I pretty much was trying to figure this out as I went along. So even some of my early look reviews of certain albums, they're pretty choppy because I wasn't necessarily sure exactly what I was doing. But over time, I've picked up certain things. I figured certain things out about what I like, what I don't like, and how certain things work. So I've really tried to understand that, and even with genres and styles that I don't necessarily listen to all the time or really get into, when I listen to them, I'm going to give them a fair shake, because as an artist, you put a lot of time and effort into that. And I want to, if there's something I like about it, I'm going to say it. Don't get me wrong. If there's something I like about it, like with this album, with the power and the energy behind your vocals, it was a draw into every single song on this record.
Exactly. Great. Well, it's something that if you're into classical music, but it's just music in general, music appreciation classes, their main thing is to listen to this piece and tell me what the form is. And it's about the form, and you can listen to any hard rock. I mean, I don't care who it is, I mean, there's form in it. But I think some of the pop stuff, and even some of the EDM stuff, there really isn't any form. There's really no rhyme and reason as to section to section to section. What I like is what you mentioned earlier, is where there's a point where you're going from letter A to letter B to pre-chorus, and then from pre-chorus into letter C, which is chorus. Here we are. Here's the business right here, and how well you do that is, I mean, it's how good you are at arranging. Arranging is really a big thing, no matter what it is, whether it's reggae, whether it's hard rock, whether it's metal. It's about form. Always about form.
And when it comes to that form too, it's about also basically kind of guiding you along with the message that the song is saying, not only with the lyrics and with the vocals, but with the instrumentals as well. Because if you're trying to build a song based off, let's say it's based off of depression, and you're trying to build into that, whether it's something that's a little bit more serious, a little bit more like drawn back, a little bit more subdued at the same time, what you want to do is, when you're going from that, building that form from verse to chorus or verse pre-chorus chorus, you're going to want to lead in so that that feeling of going from one spot to the next, from one point to the next, you understand the path of that feeling and people can relate to that. And especially if you went through something like that yourself, whatever the situation might be, whatever the theme of the song might be, if you went through something like that personally,
You'll
just
recognize it.
yeah, just even if it's something that people didn't go through exactly the same that you did, just the emotions and feelings, people are going to recognize that pattern and remember that emotion. So that guiding along with that, they're going to remember and relate to it with what they went through. And that's an incredibly powerful thing.
Well, I read something. I don't know if I read it or heard it. It was somewhere in the last 6 months or well, maybe more than that, maybe a year. Somebody said, if it isn't personal, it isn't art. Wow, dig that, because we can all write. I mean, I've been writing pop songs for a long time, and I know that some of it's just a matter of, well, okay, she loves him, he doesn't like her anymore, da 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 da. You know, you have your premise, you write around that premise, and then I realized, I said, well, that's all really great, but I kind of want to get a little more personal. I want to talk about some things. I mean, occasionally there's like a blues tradition that says, oh, baby, honey, what's wrong with you? You know, I mean, there's a certain amount of that it climbs into my music every once in a while. And usually you can go, well, I got that. You know, if you're in the mood for some loving, come on over here. You know, that kind of baloney, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. Like when I first started with the Sons back in the day, I was kind of going, I love R&B, and then all of a sudden I'm listening to the Beatles, and I'm listening to some really cool lyrics, very uplifting lyrics, and I'm going, well, I like that. Or Bob Dylan, for instance, you know, I'm not digging the music that much, but I love that these people are saying this. And then I was going, you know, from listening to Wilson Pickett and stuff, I was going, I'm a man and a half, and you know, let me get these words and put them in these grooves and see what happens. So I ended up doing a lot of that. And that's one of the things I think that really got a lot of people's attention about my songwriting was with the early Sons, is that I crossed that over. You know, I tried to cross over some kind of uplifting lyrics that mean something, that say something, that story, that's got your heart in it, instead of just the usual, you know, I'm going to New York, sorry, but I can't take you. You know, I mean, oh, that's a great tradition, but it's not what I want to do so much anymore. You know, just old blues lyrics. But sometimes it sneaks in, and every once in a while you get one like that. You know, and if it rhymes and it's all working and it's a good vehicle for the band, fine, I'll sing it. I was raised in R&B, so I mean that kind of stuff is second nature. Yeah, I can knock that off in a minute.
When you brought up the fact of if it's not art unless you put yourself personally into it, and if it kind of when you're writing pop songs at times for other artists, it's just kind of like sometimes I feel like, especially with pop artists, it kind of seems somewhat bland and just not necessarily as personal. And at times when I was thinking about that, trying to think of a comparison, it's kind of like all those like Hallmark and Lifetime movie Christmas movies where it's like, oh, girl goes to Christmas town and meets a guy, or a guy meets a guy, girl meets a girl, whatever it might be. And they all, it's like, and
all
it's
of a
like,
sudden you're watching
happens.
Lifetime channel, right?
Yeah. But it's like, but when you're putting your personal experience in there, then all of a sudden you get a Christmas movie like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And it's like, well, that one's on every single Christmas and everyone absolutely loves it. So
absolutely. Yeah. I see it every year.
Yeah. But it's just the fact that, and it kind of goes with music as well, where it's like when you really put yourself personally into it, you put it into your art, and people are going to appreciate it because it's all about the emotional connection that those people make with what you are trying to describe from your own personal life. And that's why so many people, when it comes to not only singing or in television, movies, writing, whatever, books, whatever it might be, when people put their own personalities and put their personal lives into it, and maybe, you know, remove some of the names, change some of the names so that people don't get, you know, too miffed about it if there's a negative story or something like that. Yeah. But putting that authenticity in there is going to allow people to really relate to it on such a deeper level that they're going to have an appreciation for it that's really going to hit them in their heart. And they're going to want to, either if it's a movie, watch it every single year around that same time. If it's a song, listen to it over and over and over again, and then tell their friends, hey, you got to listen to this song. And even if their friends aren't as big on it as them, they might see that person really enjoying it and then feel a connection that they weren't exactly going to have if they listened to it on their own. It's just a whole big thing that really gets people to connect not only with the artist, but connect even more within themselves.
Yeah. Well, everybody is, you know, nobody's that different from anybody else. Everybody really has the same feeling. And you know, whether they want to cop to it or not, whether they're honest about it or not. It's like what I've always said is, everybody's born to sing. A lot of us are taught not to. You know, they're afraid of it. You know, there was a vocal coach, and there's a handful of good vocal coaches around. Seth Riggs is one of those guys. He really deals with the instrument itself. But this Laura Hart was her name. I think she passed away. But she was more of a psychologist. She'd say, "All right, what's the song? What does the song mean? How do you feel about the song? Do these lyrics mean anything to you? Well, if they do, put it in your vocal." You know, she said, and if you're afraid to do that, let's work on that. So she's kind of working on making sure that the instrument is a clear path from heaven, where this stuff all comes from, or the art, you know, planet where the stuff all comes from, and can come through you without getting caught. And I mean, here's a real out one, but when I was younger, I was actually wiped out on acid, sitting right by a creek in Marin County. Nobody around. It was just the woods and everything like that. And I was starting to go, you know, at the time when I was singing, I didn't have much range. And then I was just thinking about it. I was listening to the birds singing, and I went, these birds don't have a break. They just go right from there all the way up. And almost every human voice has a break, a little spot where it's really hard to get around it. You got to either do it in full voice or falsetto or whatever. And I went, and listen to the range these things have. And I'm getting so high I could go duck hunting with a fork. You know what I mean? It's really slamming pretty hard. And I just realized, I said, why can't I sing up there? And then some part of me went, because when you were a young kid, a young boy, somebody said that part of your voice is a girl's voice. And I went, oh, it's a sex hang up. Gone. I gained just that one day. You know, it's not a bad one. I've heard a lot worse ones, but I was when the little kids, it's a girl's voice. Well, I'm not going to do it. Boom. And then and it took this actual acid trip for me to go, and listening to some birds for me to go, oh, well, that's gone. You know, and right after that, I had this falsetto, which when I got to LA and started doing vocal dates and stuff like that, it bought me my first house. Using that part of my voice, which I didn't have up until I figured out I did have it. I just didn't use it, you know? So, I mean, a lot of people are that way. Now, I got a question. You hear, I listen to, do you have satellite radio at all?
I don't, because whenever I listen to stuff, I always listen to stuff that I find. So I'm always searching for this stuff online. I know that my dad just bought a brand new truck. He got it on there. He's super excited about satellite radio. So he's got so many different things loaded.
You check it out. I think it's 36 or 37. It's called Octane.
Oh yeah. I'm a huge, because on Facebook, there's this group that this one guy runs, named Joe Alfano. It's an Octane fan club, about 18,000 people on there. And so many people post on there about all this different stuff about the music that's on there. I'm so on
hearing I think some of the coolest drummers and guitar players slamming like crazy. But most of the singers are, I can't understand them. And I go, you got a couple of years of doing that before you ain't going to be able to do anything. You know, because there's a certain point where you go, hey, this guy's hurting his voice. I mean, you ever gone to a football game, just got caught up in it and just started going, run, you know, like,
oh yeah,
do that for about 2 hours and then go home and try to sing. Ain't gonna happen, you know. So I always wonder about that. These guys seem to be able to keep doing it year after year after year, and I just go, how can you guys do that? I can't even go to a football game and go, yeah, you know, because I don't want to hurt my pipes. You know what I mean?
Well, from what I've actually found out is there are certain techniques that they use in order to sometimes coat their throat so that when they do sing those, the sound still comes out the same, but it doesn't hurt their throat as much. Plus, cool. I know there also is a vocal coach somewhere out there. I can't remember her name, but she really figured out a way to do those unclean vocals, those really deep, unclean, like scowls and screams that really just lets people do them, but also makes their voices and their vocal cords trained so that it's not nearly as strenuous on them. So that's why they're able to do them for a long period of time.
You just answered a question that I've had for a long time, because I love listening to the station, but after a while, I hearing that same kind of singing. and you know, I'll listen in if I can actually hear the lyrics. There's a lot of really cool lyrics on a lot of this stuff. And but boy, some guitar players that are through the roof awesome. And it you know, 10 a little more than 10 years ago, that was like metal. But I think now the same guys that played just thrash metal, you know, have cooled their chops down to where they're able to play all that fast stuff if they want, but it's still melodic somehow. There's some great players on some of these records, you know. I
Oh
listen
yeah.
to it a lot. Love it. I thought for sure you'd know that one. You'd have that. You listen for a day, you're going to get satellite radio just to have that. It's smoking. I mean, and a lot of the bands I've never really heard that much, but you know, Godsmack, but that's one from about 10 years ago. There's a handful of really cool bands that I really like.
I can easily understand that. And like one that I feel like you would like would be Alter Bridge, if you've ever heard of them.
Who?
Alter Bridge.
Oh yeah. They've been on that station a couple of times.
Yeah, because I saw them live right before the pandemic hit, and I can't play guitar. I don't even understand exactly how a guitar works when it comes to actually playing it. I understand the sounds and how different things work within it, but trying to actually play it, I can't figure it out. I still remember watching Mark Tremonti on stage, their lead guitarist. I forgot what publication. I think it was Kerrang named him the best guitarist of the 2010s. Watching him play live, I'm like, I don't even understand how to play a guitar. But then there's what this guy is doing. I don't understand any of this. Like, this is a whole different level. And the whole entire show, I was staring at his guitar, trying to figure out exactly how he was doing these things. Like, the only time I saw Rush, when I was watching Neil Peart drum, trying to figure out, how in the heck are you doing all this stuff, man? It was just mind-blowing.
Was a major piece of work. I love that band. Rush was killing me. My friend Jason Sheff, who was with Chicago, played bass and sang with Chicago for a good portion of the time I was there. He does some work with a guitar player in Rush. He learned some of the Geddy Lee parts and the vocal parts, and they play some of those tunes. I've gone, that must have been a little serious woodshedding going on. You must have been practicing for a long time, you know. It's pretty nutty.
Say with all the stuff that Rush did and just all the intricacies behind the music, there had to be so much practice going on there. And then seeing him play live, seeing him play all that to precision, I'm just sitting there thinking, how is this even possible?
Well, practice makes perfect. You know, I mean, I know there's a lot of bands out there that right before the Suns' first album, when I was a kid, we practiced every day. We had 3 paying gigs in the year 1967, but I wrote a whole double album, all but one song. During that period of time when we rehearsed it, we got it together. We spent every day working it. We went to the shows. We play all kinds of gigs and stuff like that. But it was every day, you know, 6 days a week. We had a practice hall. We had the stuff set up. We just go to the practice hall. If I had to hitchhike to get there, that's the way it was. And we just rehearsed all the time. And the thing about doing that, it's, you know, it seems like it's an awful lot of work. Couldn't I just, you know, why not just read a chart and I'll just play it live? No. We're putting this together. You know, together we're putting this together. It's not one guy doing it. It's like we're all doing it together. That's a whole other move than what a solo album's about. But I know how to do it. You know, I've always been kind of a band guy, and it really, really helps. And with me, I would always stay behind. After practice is over, most guys would go home, and I'm sitting there jamming with two or three of the guys. Hey, we're just gonna. I want them to play drums. My drummer hated me playing his drum set, but that's how it worked.
Yeah, but
you're gone. I'm playing them.
But what really comes down to is just that just the love and the effort and the consistency and just the enjoyability that you had behind making all this music has led you to practice with your original band 6 days a week and then write a double album with only 3 paying gigs in that year. It's all of a sudden, fast forward from 1967 to 2020, seeing where you are right now. That ethic and that love of the music and that love of what you're doing has led you to what you're doing today.
Exactly. I mean, if you want to really be good, you got to work at it. And you know what I found out years ago? It's the better the musicians, the more rehearsal you need. You know, sometimes, well, hey, this guy's really good. He'll get it real quick. No. We don't want that. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is a guy who wants to get in with all the rest of us. He may be better than the rest of us, but when we're all rehearsing together, we're all the same. We're all as good as each other. That's just kind of the way it works, you know. And it's kind of hard when you really are better than the next guy. But you know, when you're rehearsing, we got to make it all go like that. And that's what some of these bands, I listen to some of these bands, like I say, on Octane, I'm going, man, I can just, all I can do is just imagine a rehearsal room that these guys have lived in to get this good, you know?
Oh yeah,
And it may turn out to be just the one producer playing the whole thing and their electric drums or something. But if they did, they figured out how to do it well. But I mean, it usually sounds like some of these bands, some of these sections that they have are just so musically cool. It's like, oh God, dig this, you know. It knocks me out to hear that kind of stuff. I like all of it, you know. I'm almost like my doctor, you know. I'll go to a mosh pit one day and go check out Beethoven the next. There's something cool about all of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to close this out, this podcast, this conversation with this, when it comes to the people that are listening to this, whether it's people that love your music or people that are loving the conversation based off of everything we're talking about with the intricacies behind music. With the better musician, the more rehearsal that's needed and the more practice that's needed, because it's just going to make you so much better, make you so much more perfected within your own craft to make that art. So
yeah,
then you get to a level where all of a sudden you're on Bill's level. Or whichever way he's going to be on the video. I don't know which way anymore, so I'm just going to point both ways.
Yeah, right. I hear you. Yeah, I mean, the more you do something, the better off you get at it. And, you know, and I was thought, you know, playing, singing, writing, it's all a craft. Putting strings on the guitar is part of the craft. It's the same, you know, it's the same thing as singing on an album. It's all part of the same thing, and it's just, you get to, you know, when I grew up, really when I was just first started playing with the Sons back in the day when I was relatively young, I just realized that if you do this a lot, you have a better chance of art coming through you. If you really approach your craft and you spend a lot of time doing it, you know, it can seem a little boring at some level, but if you do it and you spend a lot of time doing it, there's more chance for art to come through you. Spend time on the craft and art's going to happen. It's just the way it works.
That is the perfect motto to bring this to a close. So, Bill, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. This was something that was absolutely incredible, talking through all this different sort of music tendencies and music ideas with you, going through your album, being able to listen to it, listening to Reason to Believe, and really getting honestly amped up by it because of the way that it was written, the power in your vocals, the energy behind it really did stand out. And I'm looking forward to telling people about this. And honestly, I'm looking forward to see what my dad's reaction is going to be to this podcast. Not only when I tell him that it happened, but also when he actually watches it during one of his late night YouTube binge sessions.
Play the music for him, see what he thinks.
Oh, I will. I might do that tomorrow as well. Just be like, hey, what do you think of this? I got a
feeling he might go, whoa, now we're talking business. You know what I mean?
I feel like he's going to do just that. And I'm going to have to make sure I let you know what he thinks, just because he might just be like, whoa, wait, what is this? Whoa. Just kind of get some of that kind of motive in there. I'm going to have to record a little video and send it to you.
That's what we want to see, is that kind of reaction. Whoa, what the fuck is this shit?
That is what we want to see. And for everyone listening, when it comes to finding Bill online, when it comes to finding where you can follow all the stuff, where you can listen to all his music, stream all his stuff, just take a look at the description in the podcast, whether on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio. I'm going to have all the links there for you guys, so it's going to be super easy to find it. And when these song comes out on January 1st, that is Reason to Believe, January 1st, 2020, you're going to start out 2020 right. You know, let's take 2020, put it in the back burner. Let's go to 2021 and start out right. So listen to Reason to Believe when it comes out. Trust me on this. It's going to start the year out the best way possible.
Thank you so much, Kevin. You're a scholar and a gentleman, or at least one of the hang, man. You're a good hang. It's great talking to you.
It was great talking to you too, Bill. Like I said, singer, songwriter, musician, whatever it might be. And of course, the last part about it, all around good guy.
Hey, don't forget, BillChamplin.com/shop. And you can pre-order the record.
Oh, I'm putting that link in there as well.
If you like CDs.
Oh, I'm putting that link in there as well. I put as many links I can in there that relate to it. So I got you covered.
Cool, man. Thank you, buddy. I'll talk at you.
Thank you, Bill. And I never like to end these with a goodbye, because it seems like, it'd be the last time we'd ever talk. And I don't want that. I enjoyed talking to you so much. I'd love to do this again sometime, whether on the podcast again, or hopefully COVID-19 ends, get back on the road, maybe do this in person, because that would be freaking awesome. So I don't want to end this with a goodbye. So I'm going to end this with something I always end this with. See you later.
See you for sure. Be good.
Whoa, folks. That was my review with Bill Champlin. And remember, his single, Reason to Believe, is coming out on January 1st. Living for Love, the album, is coming out in 2021. And God, this was such an incredible conversation. Dad, I hope you really enjoyed this one, because this one was fun. And I can't wait to be able to talk to Bill again about music, whether it's in person, whether it's over the podcast. Once again, this one was so much fun to do. And I loved everything we talked about music. So please listen to this again if you guys want to really get in depth with the art of music and hear all of Bill's fun stories, because they were fantastic. On that note, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching and listening to the Chord Progression Podcast by the MSOTD Rocks, where rock and metal thrive. My name is Kevin. Happy New Year, everybody. And you guys know how I end every single one of these episodes with a big, healthy, and hearty see ya. Yeah.